You're now recording.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Christine Hasbrook, and I am the chair of the Cemetery Property and Building Committee. I don't have it in order, but before we call this meeting to order, can we have a moment of silence so that we can just pray a little bit, have meditation in the manner that you're accustomed to quietly, and then we'll open up the meeting. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Now I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay.
All right. First thing we have, we still have the tentative agenda. That's the same.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and let's go ahead and start with the cemetery. And I'd like to start off with the policy. And let's jump to the one down about the placement of items. And just as a reminder, I want to let everybody speak who would like to speak. That's the right thing to do here. And if when you make your comments, if you can remember to keep it in a solution base. And after receiving phone calls from different committee members, council members have received phone calls, letters to the editor, letters, just general comments, phone calls. I've received quite a few, and I think some of the other councilmen have. And I think it's necessary that we take a look at the policies of the placement of flowers. And I have a few suggestions just based on what was presented to me from some other citizens in town that couldn't be here, and from reviewing and some research, looking at policies of other cemeteries that are similar in size and that are owned by towns. And so some of the things that they talked about is having fresh flowers removed within a week of interment, so because after a week's time they do go sour. Sometimes they can go a little bit longer, and then all material be removed within 30 days. And that's pretty standard across all the policies I've seen at cemeteries. And then if you want to keep any of the funeral decorations, please leave them with you as you leave. Take them with you as you leave. That the flowers be seasonably appropriate arrangements that may be left on the grave. Fresh flowers must be removed in a week, and all artificial flowers be removed if they show signs of wear and are dirty. And then the placement of the arrangements be by saddle, shepherd's hook, containers that are cement, containers that are cement or heavy duty to reduce the breakage. So, Philip, did you?
And I believe we had discussed that, I mean, this would obviously be year-round.
Year-round.
And Philip had discussed the idea that have one time a year at the beginning of March.
This one says March 1st.
Say
and that would
at
allow
March 1st, things get cleaned off, old flowers. So just to get a whole
Spring
fresh
cleaning.
new start. Yeah.
Or if people want to remove them by March 1st, they take them home.
Correct.
And we don't remove them. But you wanted me to give a little history? I think the mayor was.
Yes, and I just want to let everybody in the audience know, as mayor of the town, I rarely get involved in the legislative minutia. This is like the 5th committee meeting I probably attended. A number of you have wanted me to be here. I want to stress to you that the new council has been in office a month. This issue was sort of dumped into their lap at the last meeting, and it was not a lot of discussion. And I think the vote, this policy was adopted last November with very little fanfare, but it was very public. We had meetings. It was well circulated. But I think it caught people off guard when we actually started enforcing and sent the notice out that we're going to start enforcing. But yeah, I'd ask the town manager to briefly if you could just explain what led to the policy change last year. How did we get here?
We got here when Gwyneth Procyse, and I'll just committee, Gwyneth Procyse, who was the treasurer, who retired last November and December I think, she had been the longtime manager of the cemetery. And I think we started, if you look at the minutes, probably in 2015 or 2016, meeting with the committee to talk about certain things about the placement of headstones. That's really what started looking. There was questions about how many headstones could be placed on an 8 grave and a 2 grave. Did they have to be centered and all those kinds of things? That's what really started the discussion about the cemetery. Okay. During the discussion, there were several questions about what is permitted to be put on the grave. And I said, well, we really don't enforce it. We really don't have any rule that we enforce. So there's a de facto no rule. And he said, well, do you think we need something? And I picked this up, and this is the reason why we had the policy that we had. This was on a grave in Lakeview Cemetery, and we've removed it. But that's what started the discussion. That's where it came from. Okay? I don't know the purpose of it. It was a memorial, but that's what started the discussion. It was a series of motorcycle tires and drinks that were put on a grave. Okay? That's what started us having the discussions about it. I think the end result of the flowers, the number of times a year, I don't know if there was a methodology for that. I think that the committee met, and it's on video, but the committee met several times, and they kind of went back and forth, and what do you think, and what do you think? And Mr. Hamner obviously knows a significant amount of cemeteries, was on the committee, and he felt like that was inappropriate, and the committee agreed with him. And the flowers were not specifically what we requested to be changed. We asked them to look at things like
Decorative items, so.
items that we can't mow around, that we can't maintain around, okay? Those are the kinds of things that really were the specific problem that started the discussion about the placement of memorials or monuments or any of those other things.
Just a show of hands, how many folks are here tonight because they're upset or opposed to the new cemetery policy? Pretty much everybody here. Okay, very good, very good. Is there a designated spokesperson who'd like to lead off to start comments tonight?
I would love to.
Okay. And as chair, Ms. Hasbrook, come forward to the podium.
Come to the podium of the speaker, please.
Yes.
You're good?
Yeah, if you just state, if everyone could just state their name and where they live, just for the record, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm a shorty. Paula Fazio. My son has been buried in that cemetery for the last 14 years. I take care of his grave. I move, and yes, I have a lot of stuff out there. He was 7 weeks old when he was buried. I have Pooh Bears. I have flower arrangements. I have angels. 2 statues in particular that got picked up that I never received back, and I don't know what happened to them. They're very expensive, which is the reason they were small angels. Nobody ever has to say anything about Drake's grave because it's taken care of, because I take care of it. There are some out there that don't take care of their stuff, but I do. And for the last 14 years, all of his toys and everything, that's like his room for me. And anybody could probably understand why it's hard. Do you have anybody that y'all go visit in cemetery? Does it make it a little bit easier to have any of their belongings or things over there? Because for me going over there, I had to go over there Mother's Day weekend, and there was nothing there. Nothing. First time in 14 years I had ever been there to see just a headstone. Sharon Dalton has a absolutely beautiful statue that stands at the end of her husband's grave. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, and they told her she was going to have to take that away. For me, of course, he was in the military. That's part of who he was. Isn't that what you do when your loved ones die? Isn't that how you carry their name on? You surround yourself with things that remind you of them? Is that not what you do? Because I'm not sure I would have agreed to have him buried there if I knew this was going to be the case. And this, of course, was put over there as a memorial. I knew Josh. He rode dirt bikes, and because his family had not ordered a headstone, that's what they put there instead. So when the headstone would be delivered, that would have been taken away. The beer I have nothing to do with. I don't know about that. But, I mean, it makes it easier as a mom. I can't go home and ask Drake how his day was at school. I can't have the simple conversations everybody else can have with their kid. That's where I go, and that's where I sit. And when I see Pooh Bears, and when I see angels, and when I see anything like that, it reminds me of him. And I had a lot of stuff out there, and I do take care of it. And when I went over there and had nothing, and to only get a quarter of the things that I had over there back, I still haven't gotten all my stuff back that was picked up to begin with. So, and I'm sure there's nobody in here that feels any different than I do. I mean, it's maintained and everybody maintains their own things that have stuff over there. So maintaining it is not even an issue.
We thank you. We thank you.
So much.
Anyone else would like to anyone else would like to address the committee? Mr. Nash has a point. Just a second.
Philip, where are the items? Do we know? I know you and I had spoken to this, that someone else removed them. And we're not.
The items that she's speaking of?
Correct.
Sadly, previous employee, Justin, removed them from the cemetery.
And we're
Moved
not
them,
sure.
and he moved them from about 2 other graves, okay, that I know of. They came up to the office, and Jennifer called me, and I came back, and I said, if there's something missing, let us know. She gave us a list, and it's in your board packet tonight, or your committee packet, so we'll discuss that. The claim was that some was returned, and there's an appreciable amount of it that is back on the headstone and back at the site, but she claimed that there are items missing. I don't dispute, I'm not disputing whether they were or not, I don't know. But what I do know is, before we pay it, I'd like to speak to you guys, let you guys know what's going on. But yeah, she has a claim that there are several statues.
We'll help make that right. I think the council will help make that right.
Yeah.
I think so. Sir, you can state your name just for the record.
William Dooley.
Yes, sir.
Drake is
Absolutely.
awesome. My understanding, when I purchased the deeds for the plots, I bought 4 plots in a line. And I got the first letter about this in 14 years, and it just so happened to come yesterday. Same address has been that's on the deeds is on anything that can be mailed.
Right.
And he said that this item started the conversation, you said in 2015?
2015 or 16, I couldn't remember what I said.
He's got a child with my former stepdaughter. And he died after 2015. So that's
I think it said 16 on it.
a load of crap. I mean, I don't understand how you pay for something and you buy the plot. So that should mean I own it, correct?
It does, but it's been brought to my, that's been a good question. That's been on social media. My understanding, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, there is a language in the agreement of the rules of cemetery that they are subject the way they are that date, and also they could be changed at a later date. I believe that's the case.
Town code has never permitted this. Has never permitted this. It just has never been enforced. That's the difference. These kinds of things, not so much the flowers, but all the additional items have always been prohibited. It's still on the town's code. That's
So by town code, many of the items that we're talking about tonight, and some of which we've seen here tonight, are prohibited.
they were prohibited by town code. This is, remember, just policy.
Right.
The town just has never enforced it. Prior to me getting here, 20 years before I worked here, we didn't go out there, and everybody's very cautious about removing things. And then the discussion started in 2016, and that's when it got going. And the Batman paraphernalia that was out there,
Right.
and then Paula's son's location was.
I remember in particular, it was a radio that a neighbor through the woods had complained about, that people were taking radios over there and leaving them playing battery-powered radios.
Right.
And that's where it really stemmed from, was that.
One thing I think we can all agree on, ladies and gentlemen, and I've said this before, and I do want to give the previous council, they did have very open public meetings. There were at least 3. I believe a public hearing was held on the policies. Of course, hey, that's yesterday. We're here today. We all grieve differently. I've heard some people say, and it's not, I don't think it's incumbent on any of us here to tell you or each other how to grieve. And I think that's one thing we can all agree on tonight. Each of us in this room grieves differently. We're trying to find a policy, and we're going to get it right. A lot of times in Blackstone we stumble, but we're going to get this right and make this right and have something that can accommodate most everybody and be sensitive at the same time. The Channel 6 guy said 2 weeks ago, as well as a visitor from another community, y'all have one of the most beautiful cemeteries I've ever seen. And I think we all can take pride in that, want to keep it that way. And we will get this right. We have stumbled on this one, and we will get this right.
And I understand the thing about, beer bottles and radios, but as far as flower arrangements, say we both want to go over there and put something there, but your new policy is pretty much stating there's only one thing that can go, so we have to, I mean.
We're going to get this right. Like you said, Joe DiMaggio could not bury Marilyn Monroe here because he'd be violating the policy. He had new flowers put on her grave every week, every Friday. She couldn't be laid to rest in Lakeview under the current proposed rules. We're going to get it right. Mr. Dooley, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I feel like many of you are on the same page. Yes, please come forward. And like I said earlier, my pupils are dilated. A lot of you look familiar past the third row, but I can't tell exactly who you are. But I know you're serious.
That's it. My name is Peggy Stewart. First, I want to give you this letter, this one that you can pass along. And this is the envelope you asked me to write you a letter, and there's nothing else left to count. Thank you. Again, my name's Peggy Stewart. I come here with a really, really heavy heart. I wrote a letter to council addressing. I understand your concerns in every area, but the one that's really heavy on me is we live in a military community, and I am disheartened at the fact when council made these policies and you came up with 5 holidays. What did you forget? Where is your respect? I am the widow of a 25-year, or really 24-year, United States Air Force veteran that's laid to rest out in Lakeview Cemetery, along with lots of other veterans. Under the policy, you have forgotten their veterans. According to this, we can't even put an arrangement on their grave for Veterans Day. According to what you're saying, a flag, whether it's the U.S. flag or the Confederate flag, cannot fly on a grave out there. Well, those men and women fought that each one of you are sitting in this room today free, that I'm free. And it's wrong that a flag can't be on their grave at all times, 365 days a year, if we so wish and desire to place one there. Okay? I want you to stop. It's not just about Veterans Day. I want you to stop and think about all the other holidays. What about the anniversary that we've lost someone that's laid out there? We can't place something. What about when you're just feeling blue and you want to go take something? You can't do that. All right, I understand the need for rules and certain things being allowed and certain things can't be allowed. I understand that maintenance, weed eating, cutting grass, that's a tough job. But as long as what we're placing on the graves of the ones that we love doesn't bring hindrance to the people out there weed eating and cutting grass, what does it matter whether there's 1 flower or 10 flowers set out there? They can be done so that we don't bring problems. And the other thing I want you all to stop and think about when considering what you're going to do, and I'm just hitting the highlights of my letter to council.
It's a good letter.
I want you to stop and think. You have few holidays listed. That gives you 11 days for each holiday that something can be on a grave. If you subtract that number from 365 days a year, 310 days, the people that we love, we're going to have a bearing cemetery. And I think that the deceased, as well as those of us grieving, deserve better. So I hope you all will really consider your policies and you will make some changes. And maybe this isn't the time to ask, and I don't want to make anyone mad, but I've thought about something after a conversation that you and I had on the phone, and you mentioned to me that the cemetery, there wasn't money there in cemetery. You needed to figure out a way to generate money for the cemetery. When does a cemetery need to generate money? What happens to the money that we buy our plots with?
I can answer some of that. By law, when you buy a plot, and right now it's $400, the council doubled the fees 3 years ago. And then by state code, at least 10% must be set aside into perpetual care.
10% is the minimum that has to be set aside. So on a $400 grave, $360 is put into an operating fund for the cemetery, and $40 is put aside into the perpetual care fund. Perpetual care can't be used.
Right.
That's for when the town's defunct or the owner of the cemetery is not there, that somebody will cut the grass.
I used to think perpetual care, ladies and gentlemen, I think a lot of you do too. I used to think perpetual care meant I pay this so the town will forever. That money set aside in case the town or whoever owns the cemetery went belly up, there'd be funds in the future for future maintenance of that. So I used to think, perpetual care, I had a different thought in my mind as to what it was. But when you get through paying, how many employees do we have dedicated to the cemetery? 2?
You've got 2 full-time employees that work in the cemetery. Now, in January and February, after leaf season, they're not there. They're picking up rubbish or couches or something like that. But about 9 months a year, you've got at least 2. And with this rainy summer, we've usually had 3 guys coming through there, okay? I'll give you the numbers this year. I started messing with this thing in December. We've had 17 funerals, burial permits issued in the cemetery this year, okay? And up until July 1st, we haven't had a funeral since July 1st. There's been very few new interments in the cemetery this year. Knock on wood, exactly.
That's it.
Can I raise a point that is,
Let's let him finish his.
And I'll be brief. We've only had 17 funerals this year, okay? And that's $1,700 that we've collected for burial permit fee. Before January, we didn't collect that fee, okay? $1,700. We've sold 10 graves in the cemetery at
Since
$400 a piece.
Since
January 1st.
No,
January 1st, okay.
So take out the perpetual care, and for the operating fund, it's about $3,600. $3,600 and $1,700 is the revenues that we've collected in the cemetery this year. And for 3 people to be cutting the grass, I'm just telling you, we're trying to make funds at least try to break even. And we're not even getting close. If you take 2 full-time employees, we're not even coming close. The purpose of the burial permit was to close that gap, especially for folks that had purchased plots years and years ago. I think some of them were sold for $25 a piece and $75 a piece if you go back and look at the historical purchases. So those folks in those older plots, yeah, 25 was probably a lot back then, but they paid 25, and I think we even had to have civic groups come up with a perpetual care on many of those lots.
The Rotary Club raised the funds in 1990.
There you go. So at the end result is we got 2 guys in there, and the finances of the cemetery, if you look at it as a separate fund, okay, because right now, when you pay your light bill, a part of the light bill goes to cut the grass in the cemetery. When you pay your water bill, a part of that goes to cut the grass in the cemetery. And we're trying to get away from that. Are we ever going to be self-sufficient in the cemetery? No. If we don't generate more activity or more funerals or more sales, no. Come through. That's the fact of the cemetery.
Well, I'm not going to say that. I just want to say one other thing
Yes,
before I
ma'am.
walk away from this
Hold
podium.
on just a second. Let's let Ms. Stewart finish, and I'm going to recognize Cindy Taylor Longish, yes.
All right, well, I was just going to say, I hope that Mrs. Dalton will come forward and speak her mind on how she feels on her statue standing out there. And I just want to say to you, Mr. Colburn, if you remember, your dad went out there and took a beautiful picture of that statue that looks out over that cemetery. And as they have said, I understand some things we can't have, like bicycle tires. But if things sit and they don't create a hindrance and they bring forth a peace even, not just for for the person that's there, but for everybody. Sure. You ride through there, you see beautiful arrangements, you see graves decorated neatly. And if it brings a peace to the cemetery, that's what a cemetery is. It's about peace.
Absolutely.
So just please reconsider your thoughts. And I do want to thank you all as part of the council and the whole council and the fact that you came to a decision that we are not 2 cemeteries, we are one. We can't be looked at as the old and the new. We are one cemetery, we are one group of people grieving, and it's called Lakeview Cemetery.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. Before we go to another speaker, Cindy Taylor Longish had a point she wanted to raise about something Mr. Van Orbeck said.
up until approximately 3.5 years ago, at least once a month, I go to the cemetery a minimum of twice a week. I have since I was 12 years old. There were not-away inmates that cut our grass at least once a month and did not cost the town of Blackstone a penny.
They still will. They still working.
So where is that figured in? I mean, we talk about the cost of getting our grass cut. They don't cost us a penny, so.
It's,
So
it's
where-
our equipment they're still using, and
They don't come, how often do they come?
About one day a week.
Let's, okay, very good. Who else would like to speak? Well, you've spoken, let me,
In reference to what she said about the inmates,
very quickly, yes.
I used to take a group of inmates over there because I worked at Nottaway Correctional Center. And you guys are saying that they use your equipment. I know for a fact that Nottaway Correctional Center has approximately about 100 riding lawnmowers, zero-turn lawnmowers,
Wow.
and weed eaters, and the equipment that they can bring on the bus to take care of all that. And I know that from seeing it.
they don't bring them here.
We will definitely pursue that, I promise you that.
I promise you.
I saw a hand behind you, Mr. Gary Taggart, I believe. I know Gary. I know your voice even better.
Oh, I was told that earlier today, but we'll just leave that alone. For the record, Gary Taggart, 410 4th Street, Blackstone, Virginia. Thank you all for your time, and I'll be very, very brief. I received the letter, as many of us here did, in regards to the policies of the cemetery. Mainly what I want to do is just make a statement, and it's just, the first part, just my opinion. The plots used to sell for $200, then they went to $400. We bought a plot, $400, and now all of a sudden there's another $200 on. I understand what that's supposed to be for. I still call it a fine for dying to be buried in Lakeview Cemetery. That is my opinion, and that's the way it's going to stay. The other thing, the dates. When I looked at the dates in this letter, that you could put arrangements on there, the first thing that crossed my mind is we are disrespecting the deceased. We are disrespecting the families of the deceased. If God forbid, if my wife or my children or my grandchildren were interred out there and somebody told me, well, you can't go out there and put flowers or something on their grave, you got to wait till such and such a date, there's going to be a problem. That's just the way I feel about it. And I think that many others do, but I'm speaking for myself. We do have a beautiful cemetery out there. I know there's a lot of stuff in the news right now about what's been going on out there and things that have been found, but this is basically on the letter itself, the dates. There needs to be a big reissuing of this thought.
There will be.
Okay, thank you. That's
Thank you,
all I
Mr.
want to say.
Tagg. Thank you. Short and sweet. Cindy Taylor Longest, you may have the podium. It looks like you've got visual aids with you.
Yes, sir.
Folks, let me just tell you a little brief side story. I was driving with my wife to go to see a movie in Richmond, and I got a text from my daughter. I handed the phone to my wife. My daughter, who you sometimes wondered, I doubt if she even reads newspaper. And Mary Catherine is not known to be very controversial. She's like, Dad, what is this? She's taking a picture of the ad in the newspaper. She goes, this is ridiculous. And I said, honey, we got a problem. So not just the people in this room. Yes, Cindy.
Okay. My oldest brother was shot and killed on Christmas Eve in 1984 when he was 21 years old by his best friend. Ever since then, I've been to Lakeview Cemetery no less than twice a week my entire life. We own 4 plots in Section Q. There is a headstone that says Taylor that we keep a saddle on, and we change every season. Since then, my mother has passed, and she has a footstone there. My father has passed. He was cremated. Every time flowers bloom, I cut fresh flowers and take out there. Now they're saying I can't do that anymore. I will continue to do that. You take them off today, I'll put them back tomorrow. Just saying. You're not going to stop me. Now, I understand what people say about the old cemetery and the new cemetery. I was very disgusted that it was thrown into the meeting last week without chance for public discussion. Let's make this the old cemetery rules. That was paragraph 7. At last meeting, it wasn't even read out loud. Now, I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen here with paragraph 4 of the new rules. Only one family stone can be placed on an 8-grave or 4-grave lot. Right now, that only applies to blocks 1 through 20, which is the new cemetery. Now, before it gets there, I need to solve this problem. This is a rendering of our stones. this is our plot. This is 4 graves. In the center is a Taylor, a headstone.
Right.
There's a picture of it. My brother is buried here. My mother is beside him. This is not flush with the ground. It was almost 18 inches above the ground when it was put there in 2011. There's an empty plot here, there's an empty plot there. Now beside the Taylor stone is a memorial stone. My father was cremated. He was told he had 2 weeks to live, he lived a month, and in that month he got his arrangements in order and told us exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And if you knew my father, that's the way he was. So beside the Taylor stone is a memorial stone with his name, date of birth, date of death, and where his remains lie. It is on record in his will through probate at Nottaway Courthouse that stone was to be placed. He also ordered that beside, personally I'm going to be cremated as well, that beside the Taylor stone on the other side, to complete the plot, there will be another stone place when I die, where my remains are to lie. Right now, this is legal because it only applies to the new plot. I'm not the only family that has more than one headstone in the old section like this. So,
Multiple, yeah.
so before,
Yeah, I see what you're saying now.
so before it gets slipped in, that this is gonna apply to the old section as well as the new, people with families like mine who have a center headstone and already have another headstone to the other side of it, we need to be grandfathered in so our plots can be completed as they were set up and approved by the town with stones already in place.
Are there any vacancies down there in the old
This
section?
is section Q.
Correct.
Section
Any of the
Q
old
is on
section,
Pine
are there
Road.
any
I
new
think-
lots to be sold?
Not to be sold, except for the only ones,
This is
This could be an
section
easy
Q.
the
fix.
only
that-
places, the
Which
only
is right
places
next
that you
to the new section.
can purchase lots anywhere close to the old section now is down along the side. You know where Larry's buried and Mr. Wilson buried, and some of those sections there may be some plots available. And there's some single grave spaces, but that's a new section as you get farther down on the right-hand side, closer to the woods.
This is right off Pine Road, down at the bottom of the hill next to the new section.
Pine Road is kind of the dividing line between the old and the new section.
It's exactly the dividing line. Now, I need confirmation, and I really need it tonight.
Are you grandfathered now? Is your question? It's a great question. I don't know the answer.
I
would think
must
so.
be grandfathered because is the town gonna pay for me to exhume everyone and move them to complete this,
Right.
what has been set in motion?
Well, to me, one of the problems I have with the policy, and of course, as I said earlier, I don't like to get in the weeds as the mayor of all the rules, but first of all, the policy is not very friendly to anyone in the flower business or the stone business, and that we do have industries in Nottaway County that employ that. But the other thing is, let's face it, we can have the meanest cemetery policy ever. I mean, just restrictive as it can be. It's only as good as the folks at Town Hall want to enforce it. And I don't know how in the world, with everything the town manager's got going on, how in the world you say, oh, we got a funeral, oh, who is it, where are they getting buried, oh, let's check to see when was their plot bought. It's a nightmare, an administrative nightmare.
I actually have the original deed signed by Doc Harris and Ursel Dewey in 1984, and this was laid out in January 1953.
I'll address your question. I think it got answered. Everybody's got a copy of the policy, and most everybody's got a copy
And
of
it
the policy.
is for blocks 1 through 20. I'm
Right.
cute.
But if you look at the first page, that is really the foundation and the basis for the old section. The first page on the policy.
Right.
All that was added is the flower issue.
Right.
You notice there's nothing about the headstones on 4 or 8. That only applies to the new section.
Yes, sir, but these regulations were passed and enforced in January. Eric made the motion to add this flower policy with no
To the old
discussion
section.
at the last meeting with no discussion.
Right.
What I'm afraid, someone can make the motion to pass this stone policy in the blink of an eye at next month's meeting without me being here with no notice.
Yeah, but I think that they would recognize that existing stones would be grandfathered.
Yeah.
Well, I want confirmation, I
stuff.
want on this camp.
You want to make sure
I want to say, Cindy,
your late father's wishes you want to be honored.
I want confirmation that somebody isn't gonna, this flower, no offense, Eric, but you slipped that in right slick.
There was no, we had a complaint saying that it needed to be one rule for the
But
entire
someone
cemetery,
might say the
so
same
we
thing
made that
about the
rule.
It is, I understand it, but somebody may say the same thing about the stones, it can be said. Well, they can have 2 stones in the old section, I have
I
2
specifically
stones.
said number 7 be added to
I
the
did,
old part. So that strictly says flowers.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask one thing. I want everybody in the audience to hear this as well. I think what's going to happen, Madam Chair, chairs the committee, it's my hope, and I hope everybody here will agree, all of this tonight is going to be taken into corporation, and I think you'll see council propose a brand-new, start-from-scratch policy. It may be redundant in some places. Have a big hearing, err on the side of transparency, and get this right.
But I mean, flowers are one thing, stones or something.
But they both make up a cemetery, and I think this new policies need to be, even though we'll start at the beginning, some of it may be repeated, but we need to let everybody know what's going on. But I think you're going to see what I'm hearing tonight, and I've talked to some of the members of the committee. Flowers, if you want to put flowers on a headstone, I don't think anybody in the world, any time of year. I think the town manager did have a good idea that every March 1st, let it be known that there will be a picking up of items that look old, that may not be in the best condition.
I think we would take everything, but give everybody notice, if you wanna keep your stuff, come get it before March 1st, and then March 1st, anything that's in there we'll take.
Flags.
Right, take it home to keep it, and then bring it back out on March 2nd and
March
3rd.
2nd, put it back in there, and then we'll know that old Christmas decorations and holiday decorations, that there's still points that are in the cemetery today, okay? So those are
But
the
can
kind
we
of
have a
things.
little confidence that like, y'all are not gonna change?
I
your
give you
rules
my
or something?
word that there will be, if this cemetery policy is going to be redone, re-advertised, and reacted on, re-voted on in public. And you know that I mean, all you do is ask me, and I'll make sure that you won't have to hear about it after the fact.
But these gravestones, I mean, the
It's a big
ones that
deal.
are existing will be grandfathered in.
Right.
That's just what I'm,
I think the council will probably find that reason, but there's only 3 of the members of the council are here tonight.
right.
But
They have
I'm
to be grandfathered because they're legal now.
Right.
So unless you change the
But
rules,
I'm
then
not
you-
dead yet.
You what?
far from it.
Yeah.
Far from it.
What I want to know is when I die, I'm supposed to carry that to the memorial, so my body won't be there, but they can place a stone to complete. Right now, it's one.
You raise a great point. You raise an excellent point. Let's see. Look, the committee has a long agenda. A lot of issues after this. Who else would like to speak? I think you get a feel for the spirit. Yes, Ms. Tammy Golden Abel.
First, I'd like to apologize for being late. I
That's all
couldn't
right.
get in the door. But, and I may have missed it. This is deeded property, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
There's been
It's
a
not deeded at the courthouse, but it is the equivalent of you own the. 4x10
I own it.
4x10.
But yet you can tell me what to do with my property?
Pretty standard in cemeteries. and
municipal cemeteries. That is the case.
I have 8 lots that can double, so 16 there, and then I have 4 that adjoins it. If I had known you were going to decide this after I buried some of my family there, I would not have put them in Blackstone. I would have went to Crew. I would have went somewhere else where I could do more than what you're allowing me to do now.
Well, I think the mayor and I think this committee, if I speak for them, I think they recognize that there's.
Overhaul's coming, Tammy.
and all those
Overhaul.
kind of things, and so I think that there's gonna be some additional work.
Policy overhaul. That's the word. You need to remember that. Policy overhaul.
You know, and yes, my father is there, and then my nephew is there. He was 4 years old when he passed away. So yeah, there's a lot of Batman stuff I'd like to put out there and I'd like to keep. Christmas, I had a Christmas tree. It was an artificial tree. It looked like Batman. You would have never known it was a tree. But we took ornaments and we hung it under the cape. That was for him. And for us. We definitely can't allow these rules and regulations to stay how they are. It's unnecessary.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking. I saw any other hands. Like I said, I don't want to hurry you along. Yes, sir. Mr. Dalton. Mr. James Dalton. The vision's getting clearer now.
The main thing I wanted to kind of get clarified, first of all my relatives, from my grandfather, my mother and father are buried. Mine and my wife's plot is right behind my mama's and daddy's. My brother and sister and his wife are directly behind that. It's a plot. We bought nice headstones for them. A couple of them, when I was getting her headstone, I've got cement. I got 2 cement pots They're expensive, they're heavy, and I'm surprised they stayed there as long as they have. But these days that you have on here don't conform to days that I would like to have stuff out there. I go to Clay's Garden Center and get flowers during special, whatever season it is, and put them in those pots, and I take care of it. I can understand having, I have put artificial flowers out there. I don't leave them there long enough for them to get, deteriorated and something that looks like it should go to the dump. I can understand that. But I don't want anybody picking up stuff that I put there. And it's sitting right beside the headstone. It's nothing to keep any grass cutter or anybody from doing anything. All three of those sections are well taken care of. And,
We hear you.
I hear a lot of people don't even go see their relatives when they're living, much less when they're dead. Other people do. And it's just something that needs to be changed.
We hear you loud and clear. God bless you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. I see Miss Keller, yes.
Billy, I don't need to come up there. I just had a question.
Okay.
You're saying that this is going to be overhauled.
Well, my recommendation as mayor to the committee would be, and I know this committee chair very well, she's very earnest and wants to do the right thing. I think we need to call a collective timeout, not drag it on forever, but study and start rules for Lakeview Cemetery, #1, and start from there.
Now, my question is, if it in fact is overhauled, is it going to be the same rules for the new and the old, or is it going to be a different set of rules?
That would have to be decided. I think the people in this room and the people at this council table tonight would like to have rules for the entire cemetery, just for the simplistic, because I'll be honest, I've lived here my whole life. I used to hit golf balls in a new cemetery. So when Philip says new cemetery, I used to think, oh, he's just talking about the field. But the new cemetery actually is the field and some other graves down below it. So all of us I've lived here my whole life, and there are things I'm learning about the cemetery in the last 6 weeks.
Because we have spaces in the new cemetery, and we debated we could be buried free at Amelia Veterans Cemetery because we're both veterans.
Right.
If these rules are not going to be changed, I'm going to respectfully ask for our money back, because I don't want them.
Certainly.
No, I want my money back.
And I'd like to say, I talked to Christine before the meeting. We appreciate this, and thank y'all all for caring. I know it's been contentious. I see one other hand up. Yes, ma'am.
I don't need to come up there.
Just as long as that's.
I got a question to ask.
Could you mind standing up just so we can hear your voice? Yes, Sharon Dalton.
Somebody, I think it was Philip, just said that the news media told them that's the most beautiful cemetery they had ever seen. Well, they're looking at it like it is, with flowers, like it is now, and it's beautiful. But when you take all those flowers off, you're gonna have an old drab cemetery, and that's what it's gonna be. No color, no nothing. Just gonna look like death, and that's what it's gonna look like. Go down and look in the old, down in there where nobody goes and takes care of anything, and look how awful that looks. How it would look without that. I came home from a trip the other day, drove up to the cemetery, and there's this little bench sitting there at the cemetery. I see this grave, I thought, what is that? And I got over there and it had a really nice verse on top of it and everything, and I posted on Facebook about it. And somebody called me and said they knew who put it there, that they had called in from Mississippi and had it made and brought it up there.
Wow.
Because they see me out there all the time and wanted me to have a place to sit, to visit with Cecil.
That's
It's been
amazing.
over 2 years, and it's supposed to be everything over with by then. You're supposed to die, and 3 days later you're buried.
No, you're not.
But you're not. It's like yesterday, and it's just a nice warm feeling to go out and sit and talk to Cecil, go have lunch with him. I take my lunch out there, I take my morning coffee, do my devotions out there, and anything that I'm in the mood to do. And I just thought, I was so touched that somebody had me a bench made to sit on because I was out there all the time.
That's
And
amazing.
I don't mind telling you who it was. It's a game warden and his wife from Fort Pickett. I found out who it was.
That's great. That's amazing. Amazing. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Patricia Lewis Reese, Wesley's sister.
Yes, yes.
Gladys Lewis's daughter. And it's no need of me repeating everything everybody else said, because, I mean, I'm upset by the number of days and that type of thing, and we're not gonna put the flowers, but you're gonna go back to square one and start over again and try to make a new policy. I understand about taking faded flowers that the graves not taken care of properly, that someone needs to clean it up. I understand all that. But are y'all going, once y'all have a new plan in force, are you going to let us know before y'all actually put it in force? Are you gonna send something out in a letter form like you sent to me this time? Or are you going to put it in the paper after you do it to let people know? Because
We need to let you know.
All the above. In the fairness of the town manager, there were some complaints about people not getting letter. I don't know if someone said, hey, Billy, mail a letter to everyone who's got a plot in Lakeview. I don't know if it'd be possible with the records that go back so far. But we're going to be as public as we can. We're going to shout to the masses, social media, mail, newspaper, radio, whatever.
I think you hear the general consensus is that flowers will be allowed year-round. Saddles, urns, Mr. Dalton's pots, stuff like that, flags. I think that stuff will be allowed year-round. And with the cleanup one time a year. I think that's what you'll hear from all of us up here. And I think council will agree with that too.
From old and new.
Old and new, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems to me like the biggest problems are coming from the newest part, from the newest, and y'all have the best records on the newest part of
We
the
do.
cemetery. And when you have problems, and being that I go out there abnormally much, I see the problems. I see the problems of the people that go to Dollar Tree and buy these dollar flowers and cover an entire grave with these plastic flowers stuck in there. Y'all know who it is. Pull up the records and contact these individuals. Don't punish everybody, but y'all contact these folks that own these plots and say, look, y'all overdoing it a little bit. Clean up, or we're gonna take everything off. Because it's obvious, it's a generational thing.
It is.
Folks are taught differently. Some folks think it's great to put a bunch of stuff out there and take pictures and put it on Facebook. They just don't know about it.
Well, it's just, Cindy, I beg to differ. I think we all have different coping mechanisms. And one of the reasons the old cemetery, quote unquote, has been so quiet or whatever, folks, we've got families that have died off in this community. They've died off. And we've also had, and I know several people in the room that I'm speaking to, we have had, it seems like in my lifetime, an increased number of young tragedies. And those deaths are far different than burying 90-year-old grandpa. And we are a more grieving, outwardly expressing community and nation, which is a good thing, I think. And we certainly want to be a community that embraces that, not shuns it. And I think y'all know everybody here. Sometimes local officials, you get in a hurry. That's what happened that night. We were in a 3-hour meeting. It was no excuse. And many on this panel are tired of the cemetery. I mean, the cemetery policy was a 2-year evolution, and we got it wrong. But guess what? Because you're here tonight, we're going to get it right. We're going to get it right. I see one more. Yes. Yes. One more time. Yes.
I have a question. It came to my mind.
Okay.
Why you all are going to get this right?
Okay.
Is it something that you can look into towards a grant or funding? Talking about what I don't like.
For some cemetery,
the stones that are falling, and there's not family left to straighten and erect these stones.
Right.
It's sad. Hopefully, as you all are re-looking at things and visiting things, that might be something that you all could.
We approved a bill last month or a month before last, I believe. We're going through slowly and doing that ourselves. And that's out of our own pocket, so it's no grant.
Thank you very much.
So y'all know, we try to do a bunch of them together, and I have a limited amount of funds, and so I try to do no more than $1,000 a month of headstones straightening. There's 2 of them broken in the cemetery now that we know about. You can drive through, you can see them tilted over. But they're very expensive to upright, especially the obelisks or the very big ones that are on the left-hand side in the old section. So I try to spend no more than $1,000 at a time, and we'll save up a bunch, and we'll give them to Simmons, and Jessica will make a list. And but I try to do it within budgeted means. Okay? And I think the last bill that we paid was $900 and some dollars.
and here's something else to think about cemeteries. I was thinking about this also. You know, a lot of us think if it's a nice place to go and mourn, that sort of thing. I'll be honest with you, it's in a weird kind of way, it's also economic development because a number of people that are anywhere in the area that don't live here, they'll swing by Blackstone, go to Lakeview to visit a grave, and come downtown to eat. And you won't believe there was a period, not lately, where I got letters from people in San Francisco, Missouri, that had a complaint about the cemetery or want to say how nice it looked. So the cemetery is bigger than many of us may think it is. And tonight's crowd shows that. And we thank y'all for coming. Anyone else tonight before I can let Madam Chair run with a very lengthy agenda? And you're welcome to stay. They're going to probably be here another hour and a half. I've got to go to another meeting. Thank y'all for coming, and Madam Chair, thank you.
Anybody wants to take a 5-minute break while everybody exits, just go ahead and stand and stretch.
All right, folks. We will just
Well, no, it's not county, it's school.
I'll see you tomorrow. I got it.